What's up everyone, John Renger from Techno Buffalo here, and I've got a full review for you of the big daddy on the block. This is LG's latest, the Optimus G Pro. It brings a 5.5-inch screen, a pretty baller processor and specs to the board. Let's go ahead and put it through its paces and see if this is the right giant phone for your hopefully big pocket. Let's get started. Let me start off this review as I do all reviews now with a disclaimer. I used this phone as my daily driver for 9 days and used it on and off in between for about 5 days in between. So I got a chance to know the phone pretty well. So before I get into specs and screen and all the rest of the goodness, let's just start with call quality. It doesn't make good phone calls, it's just not going to be good for you. I am testing the AT&T unit. There's an unlocked version available as well. It's got a crazy antenna for TV stuff. We've got the AT&T version, and I know the AT&T network around here pretty well, and it was as good as any other AT&T phone. I didn't have any drop calls throughout my 9 days testing actually, which is getting to be more and more commonplace. The 4G to HSPA Plus and drop down to edge transition was very smooth. That's usually where I have the drop calls. Didn't have anything here as well. Antenna was pretty strong. It was about on par with every other phone. One thing that wasn't overly awesome was the speakerphone. So if you rely a lot on speakerphone for conference calls, or if you're hard of hearing, you're definitely gonna wanna bring an external speaker or just plug something into the 3.5mm headset jack. All right, so let me remind you of the specs that are in the Optimus G Pro, and it's got them in spades, which is a weird expression. I don't know why I'd have it in spades, but it does, and it's got a lot of them. So let's go ahead and start with this here screen. It is a 5.5-inch screen, putting it on par, same screen size at least, with the Galaxy Note 2, and it is a full 1080p screen, which sort of separates itself from the Galaxy Note 2. So it's 1920 by 1080, it's 1920 the long way by 1080 the short way, which gives it a PP of 401.
PPI, stupid.
Oh, make that PPI of 401. So it's got 401 PPIs. It's a lot of PPIs. Operating system is being powered by Android 4.1, but we should see a 4.2 upgrade, maybe a 4.3 sometime soon, but at least know you got 4.1 right out of the box from AT&T. So powering this guy is a pretty beastly Snapdragon 600 chip, which gives it 1.7 gigahertz on quad cores, so plenty fast. We'll talk a lot about speed as we go through the phone, but you can probably guess this is not a slow device. So it's got 2 gigs of RAM on board, 32 gigs of storage. It's got plenty of space for you. External storage space as well with micro SD cards, so you can up that sucker right on up. On the back, we've got a 13 megapixel camera, which is pretty nice. On the front, we have a 2.1 megapixel shooter for taking all your photos. Wi-Fi, 802.11 ABGNN. If you're one of the few that's got something that uses AC, you're out of luck. You're stuck with N, but most things are N nowadays. So keep that in mind though, if you want something that's going to be fastest Wi-Fi protocol over the next 2 years, this guy does not have AC built in. Battery, you'd expect a phone this big to have a pretty beastly battery, and you'd be correct. It's got a 3140 milliamp hour battery, and we'll talk plenty about battery as we move forward. It's got NFC, Bluetooth 4.0, and the rest of that good stuff you'd expect. IR remote built in as well for you controlling your TV. There's some software that does that. I'm not going to run through that in the review, but if you want to control your TV with your phone, you can. All right, so you know what's packed into the guy. Let's go talk about all the hardware stuff and run through it. So this phone really, to me, feels very Galaxy Note 2-esque or very Samsung-esque, which means it's got a plastic removable back. It does feel pretty high quality though. It doesn't feel cheap by any stretch of the imagination. If you've used a Samsung device and you like that build quality, it's going to feel almost identical for what LG has done here on the Optimus G Pro. One issue I had with the phone, the home button is crazy narrow. Not to say I couldn't push it every time, and I was able to do that, but it just bothered me how narrow it was. It's probably a personal issue. You compare it to the home button on the Galaxy Note 2, you can definitely see a difference in the size. I preferred the larger home button of the Note 2 as opposed to the super narrow one on the Optimus G Pro. But the G Pro does have a little bit of a secret. It's got glowy LED lights around the home button, which I kind of like. So different things will glow, different colors, so you can know what's coming. It's kind of a neat trick. I actually didn't even notice it until I had the phone in the dark. I was like, oh, look at that. It's doing a disco. Also, one of the nice things it has is a memo button on the side. I thought it might be a dedicated camera button, but when you hit that memo button, you get access to all kinds of memo features, and we'll talk about that when we get to software. But I do like hard buttons for stuff, and this one definitely had them. So hardware was actually relatively impressive. And of course, your movable battery to pop in an extra one if you'd like. And if you decide to buy the Korean model, it's actually going to come with 2 batteries. The US one is only going to come with 1. So take that for what it's worth. All right, next, let's talk about screen. And a phone like this, it's pretty much all about the screen. Sweet, sweet 1080p action on a 5.5-inch screen was something I hadn't seen before, and I really enjoyed it. I absolutely loved the screen. on this phone. It was hard to see in direct sunlight though, as oftentimes it is. This one was especially washed out, even with brightness kicked all the way up. It became difficult to see when I was outside on a super bright Southern California day. Kind of had to do a little bit of this action. But it wasn't the worst I've seen. Just be aware of it when you go outside. So this is, as I mentioned, the 1080p screen. It didn't look as sharp as other new 1080p phones, the HTC One, Galaxy S4. It's probably due to the larger size. Same amount of pixel as those phones, but just spread out. By no means does it look bad. It just wasn't as sharp and crisp and overly impressive as those other screens, but it still looked really good and definitely better than, say, the 720p screen on the Galaxy Note 2. And as you'd expect, games, text, pictures, video all look awesome on a screen size like this, especially with that resolution. LG's done a really nice job with their screen. This is kind of the culmination of it. Getting one this high resolution, this big, can be difficult. They really did a nice job. Everything is crystal clear. There's no pixelation on pictures or text, videos, games. All just look beautiful on the screen. So, hey, thumbs up to LG. All right, next, let's talk about speed. And I'm not going to talk that much about speed, as you could expect with the 1.7 gigahertz quad-core processor and 2 gigs of RAM. This is by no means a slow phone. I'm not going to show you how quickly it opens up apps, because it opens up apps fast. It doesn't really qualify as tests anymore, at least for modern smartphones. They'll open up fast. Multitasking was very quick. I didn't have to close any applications. Everything just roared along quite nice. But because I know you guys want to know, the quadrant score of this phone was 11,858. I know a quadrant's not the most thorough test, but it is the same benchmark that I used in all the videos. At least you can keep an apples to apples type comparison, pun intended. All right, let's go from speed to talk about software. LG's done a lot here. So again, Android 4.1 out of the box with LG's software skin on top of it. And I think they did a really nice job with the skin. One of the things that surprisingly I liked, and we have this when I install third-party launchers, the ability to rotate it. When you rotate the screen, the phone rotates with you, which is really nice to have a totally landscape version of the operating system. It's a little thing, one thing I really appreciated. So one of the other things LG's done really nice, the Q Slide app. So you pull down the slider, you have several applications you can launch on top of each other. I found the calculator one actually to be really helpful in Calendar. And you can go ahead and launch another application. You could have one behind it, and you can go ahead and move two windows about each other. It just made life really easy. You can even have more than two going at the same time. It just was a great way to multitask. When I didn't need it, I was able to exit out. You could make one transparent or one not. It was just a great way to see a lot of information. So hats off to LG for that. I think they really did a nice job with the implementation. And it was very smooth and didn't affect performance at all, which again, was also quite nice. I will say though, with the Q Slide apps, hopefully we'll get third-party support. There isn't any out there right now, and aren't that many Q Slide apps that work. But certainly if it gets third-party support and more come, certainly the benefit behind them can totally increase. But I did like being able to use multiple apps at the same time. That was quite nice. Another feature that I really liked was Quick Memo. You can access that if you want also by the drop down, or you can just hit the Quick Memo button. What that lets you do is essentially draw on the screen with whatever you're doing. You don't have a built-in stylus here like you do with the Galaxy Note lines of phones, so you gotta use your finger, or you can pick up a capacitive stylus. But it worked well. It's a cool way just to doodle on the screen. There's all kinds of other things you can do with it. Make it look like a pen or a pencil, or thickness of it, change the color or erase it. And you can send stuff off to friends. I actually found it useful when doing maps. I was able to circle locations and send it out to myself, but now honestly I only used it that one time just to try it. I don't know how useful it would actually be in daily application, but it's more of like a, hey, cool, look what my phone can do kind of thing when you're showing friends. I also really like how many apps you're able to squeeze inside of the app drawer when you show them all. I mean, you could just see a ton of apps. Usually you gotta do a launcher and do kind of custom stuff for that, but right out of the box, I was able to see just a ton of applications which reduced my scrolling, which I was always very happy about. And speaking of launchers, I really liked what LG did with theirs. I didn't download a third-party launcher. Usually I'm a pretty big fan of Apex launcher, but I kept it stock, which kind of made me feel a little weird. But again, I think LG did a nice job, so I gave it a fair shot. The built-in keyboard that LG equipped with this was a bit quirky. It didn't always respond very well. I didn't like the layout. But the nice thing on Android, if you don't like the keyboard, you can download a myriad of other options, including now the default Google keyboard. So a ton of keyboard options. That one's not really a gripe since it can be super easily fixed. And most of you download your own keyboards anyway, but if you don't download your own keyboard, at least be aware you might have some quirks on yours as well. All right, now let's move on to camera. We got a 13 megapixel shooter on the back. They did a really nice job with the combination of camera and the camera software. The software is really intuitive. The buttons are big, and on a screen this big you'd expect, easy to find, you're able to control pretty much everything on there. I will say the images were a bit warmer than I expected, but otherwise they were really great. It's what you'd expect from a 13 megapixel camera. Now, listen, admittedly, I'm not the biggest camera guy. Brandon covers our cameras, at length. The pictures look great to me, whether it was on the phone or on a computer. They just looked good. I didn't think anything about it. I didn't think, well, all four of those look absolutely exceptional. It's certainly not DSLR quality, but it's a great camera phone picture. So take that for whatever it's worth. All right, so now let's talk about battery. It's got a 3,140 milliamp hour battery on a screen this big. Yeah, you might not think the best battery life, and you might be right. So let me talk you through my daily usage. You can understand how I use a phone to at least put my battery score into context. Take it off the charger, usually around 7:30 a.m. I've got about an hour and a half to 2 hours of phone calls. For most of the day, it's connected to Wi-Fi, either at home or at the office. A lot of texting, a lot of social media stuff goes on here. I've got it pulling down two inboxes, syncing about every 5 minutes. Doing some games on here. I'm watching certainly a lot of YouTube video on here as well. By the end of the day, when I plug it in around 11:30, I'm down to about 20 to 30%, which puts it about 5 to 10% off of where I am for most other phones I've tested. So I'm able to get through a whole day without any issue, which is really my goal. I plug my phone in at night. But if you're the kind of person who wants to go 2 days, you're not going to be able to do that here unless you get a second battery. But if you plug it in every day, you're going to be fine. I don't turn my brightness on auto brightness either. I keep it at about 80%, just the way I like it. So if I change that, I'm sure I could get more battery life out of it. But adjust your uses accordingly. You will be able to get a whole day, but just be aware that's not going to have sort of blazing 3, 4, 5 a day or week-long battery life, which really no phone at this point offers. So what's the final verdict on the LG Optimus G Pro? It gets a very solid 8.5. To me, it felt a lot like a Galaxy Note 2.5. It offered a little bit more than the Note 2 had. It was really the screen is the big deal here. I wish it had the stylus built in like the Note 2 does, but it's a really solid performer. I love big screen phones. There aren't that many options out there. If I was to walk into an AT&T store today to look at a 5.5-inch phone, I would hands down pick the LG Optimus G Pro over the Note 2. But the big thing here is the Note 2 might be old news in a few months. The Note 3 is supposedly just around the corner in the October timeframe. So if you think you might want to wait a few months to see what comes out, you might be better off surd. But if you want to get the best big screen phone today, the LG Optimus G Pro is going to be a great choice. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Please give the video a thumbs up. We most definitely appreciate it. I am John Rettinger from Techno in Buffalo. Be sure to check us out for all the latest tech news. I'll see you guys in the next video.